was memorable too. 89, I was robbed badly by the system, and that I will never forget. But 1990, it went the other way. It was a sad championship in 1990, but it was a result of the 89 championship and a result of the politics that we had in 1990 and 89. Then 91, fortunately, we were able to have a clean championship without politicians, without people playing any game. It was a technical and a sportive championship that we had this year. Now we're going to have some fun.
ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. The Australian Grand Prix final event in the 1991 World Driving Championship takes place in Adelaide, capital of South Australia, and a place where they do know how to have a good time. From the Cleland Wildlife Park in the Adelaide Hills, Jackie the koala and her little baby boy welcome you to Australia. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha, along with the old wallaby himself, David Hobbs. Jackie, stay with me for a moment, would you please? Welcome to Adelaide. Now, you might well be asking yourself why we chose to open our coverage of the final event of the season from a zoo. Well, it gives us a chance to visit with the koalas, and it's a pretty apt metaphor for the kind of weekend we've had, David.
I guess it's a pretty apt metaphor for the whole circus, really, which is where we should have been, probably at a circus. Ferrari did their usual this week and fired their lead driver, Alan Prost, when he was already here in Australia to take part in the Grand Prix, putting Morbidelli in his seat. This allowed Roberto Moreno to drive for his third team of the year, and he's driving the Minardi. The championship's all over, so Senna and Mansell have been very relaxed all weekend, and both had shattering times in qualifying, and Senna got his 60th pole of the year. But there is one more championship to be won yet, and with that is John Bisignano.
Formula One is definitely a circus, but it's also the greatest show on earth, and the final credits haven't rolled. Remember, the Constructors' Championship is wide open with 11 points separating McLaren over Williams. Sure, it doesn't have the glitz of the Drivers' Championship, but it's the Constructors' Championship that is considered the crown to these teams. It's very important to their sponsors. And all up and down this pit road, everyone wants to come away from Adelaide a winner. Maybe not by crossing the finish line first, but by putting in the best performance of the season. They want to take that momentum and that pride all through the winter months. And that makes for a super season finale.
Adelaide, Australia is decked out in her Sunday best to welcome the final race in the 1991 Formula One World Championship. Win or lose, there will be partying late into the night tonight. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Australia is brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. By Bud Light. Everything else is just a light. And by Casio. Watches that do more than keep time, they keep you ahead of the game. Welcome back to Adelaide, Australia, where for the second time in 3 years, rain will play a role in this race. We've had on and off showers all morning. At the moment, it is raining very hard. Let's take a look now at our starting lineup. It is teams 2 by 2 through the top 4 rows. On the first row, Ayrton Senna of Brazil, his 60th career pole for McLaren Honda, his 5th in this race without a victory. Next to him, Gerhard Berger of Austria, Senna's McLaren Honda teammate coming off the win in Japan 2 weeks ago. Row 2, all Williams. Nigel Mansell of Great Britain in the Williams Renault, next to teammate Riccardo Patrese of Italy, hoping to capture that manufacturer's title for Williams. Row 3, all Benetton, Nelson Piquet of Brazil, next to teammate Michael Schumacher of Germany. Row 4, all Ferrari, Jean Alesi of France, next to Gianni Morbidelli of Italy, sitting in for the fired Alain Prost. Row 5, Stefano Modena of Italy in the Tyrrell, next to the Minardi of Pierluigi Martini of Italy. Finn J.J. Leto has the Dallara on row 6, next to Italian Andrea De Cesaris in the Jordan. Row 7 is Emanuele Pirro of Italy in the Dallara, next to Maurizio Guglielmin of Brazil. Row 8, Michele Alboreto of Italy, next to countryman Alessandro Zanardi. Row 9, Mark Blundell of Great Britain, next to Roberto Moreno of Brazil. Row 10, Nicola Larini of Italy, next to Belgian Terry Boutsen. Row 11, Johnny Herbert of Great Britain. At his elbow, Eric Comas of France in the Ligier. Alex Caffey has the footwork in the field for only the second time this year on row 12, next to Satoru Nakajima of Japan in the Tyrrell, bidding farewell to Formula One with this race. On row 13, Mika Hakkinen of Finland in the Lotus, next to Carl Wendlinger of Austria in the Leighton House. Those who did not qualify, Aguri Suzuki of Japan, Martin Brundle of Great Britain, Eric Van de Poel of Belgium, and Bertrand Gachot of France. Those who did not pre-qualify on Thursday afternoon, Gabriella Tarquini of Italy and Naoki Hattori of Japan. Quickly, David, the circuit.
Well, it's not a very typical street circuit in as much as the average speed is high, 114 miles an hour. 16 corners, 2.34 miles an hour, and some parts of it are very, very tough on the transmission as we weave through East Terrace, Hutt Street, Flinders Street. Tough on the transmissions and tyres, but not so tough on the tyres today. What is going to be tough today is going down the Duquetteville Straight, where the visibility is going to be absolutely zero for everybody behind whoever's leading this race. It's going to be very, very tough for these guys this afternoon.
Totally aside from the athletes in their cars, we have to feel for the organizers. We have had absolutely beautiful conditions in Adelaide all weekend up until today. And for the second time in 3 years, one of our announcers may lose his voice, and it may be me. Nevertheless, we'll hang in, and so will they. Now we get a 5-minute board? No, 5 seconds, I gather. Hold on, everybody.
Jeepers, the visibility, oh, whoa!
And we have a big pileup. Lots of front-end contact as they go down into turn 1. But I think everybody made it through. I'm sure there may be some wings askew.
One of the Lotus and Leighton House, Carl Wendlinger and Johnny Herbert, had a touch going down the straight here as the cars weaved about on the grid in their normal way. But of course, visibility and the traction being so poor, but everybody getting through here okay. This is turning on to Hutt Street. The overhead camera, as you can imagine, unmanned. Ooh, that looked pretty close.
There is Ayrton Senna. Recall 2 years ago in the rain when his world championship was on the line. Alain Prost refused to run in the race. Senna went ahead and gave us that remarkable picture when he crashed into the back of Martin Brundle.
Hoping not to repeat that again. This is that fast right-hand sweep off. Going straight onto Brabham Straight, 2 Australian previous world champions. Now the visibility is going to get really, really poor down this long straight. Reaching 190 miles an hour on the dry. I should think they'll be just a little bit diffident about that early this afternoon. A lot of standing water there. And still raining hard. It's just starting to stop there. We see the 2 Benetton side by side. Probably young Schumacher will put on a display this afternoon. Gerhard Berger, no doubt, will as well. Great car control Gerhard Berger's got. Likes to get that car loose, swerving around, following in the footsteps at the moment of Ayrton Senna, who, of course, in the rain is unrivaled.
Once again, this is a street circuit, but this particular part of the course is on the Victoria Park horse racing track, on the infield of the horse track. And all that you see around the track there is temporary. It's all taken down.
Including the track. The track itself is re-sodded over. They take down the pit complex, the commentators complex and grandstand that we're in, and then re-sod all that. Not this bit here. We're in Wakefield Street now.
To the tune of some $1 million a year. It's a big political question. They wanted to leave that pit complex up in the infield, but the city said no. This race costs about $20 million a year to put on, and it rarely breaks even, but it does bring about $32 million into this area.
Senna just has such an uncanny touch. Just a touch of a ballerina. One doesn't like to get into too esoteric conversation about these guys, but Senna really is something else behind the wheel. And when the wet conditions come, it just brings out the absolute best in him. He's an absolute master.
His first 2 victories in Grand Prix racing came in the wet in Portugal and then in Belgium.
And of course, in the very first year of his career, 1984, driving what was then the Tolman, which was not a very competitive car, he was about to snatch victory from Alain Prost, one of the winningest drivers of all time, at Monte Carlo, when they red flagged the race. But he had been the quickest thing on the track up to that stage in his very first year.
There is Nigel Mansell trying to stay out of the spray of Gerhard Berger in the red and white car to the right of your screen. Here's that tight hairpin where Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet had that wonderful battle just a year ago in dry conditions.
80 laps to go. I bet they all wish it was 8 at the moment. There's Michael Schumacher, the young German sensation, no doubt in the wet, being young and fearless. Expect big things from him this afternoon, either a great result or a couple of wheels off the car.
We've seen Wendlinger drive in the rain at Le Mans in the 24 hours with the Mercedes-Benz sports car team, and he was one of the quickest drivers on the track.
There you see the visibility that these guys are putting up with. Nil.
How in the world do you keep your foot down in that kind of visibility?
Never was one of my favorite things, although I always did quite well in the rain, but there's rain and there's rain. This is pretty serious. It's raining extremely hard now, and if it gets much worse, they could temporarily halt this race and let some of this water, try and get some of this water to drain off.
Which will complicate things enormously. We'll tell you about that when and if it happens. With 2 laps complete, it is Senna over Berger, Mansell, Schumacher, Piquet, Alesi, Morbidelli, Patrese, Pirro, and De Cesaris rounding out the top 10. We'll be back to wet Adelaide, Australia. Adelaide, Australia. Ayrton Senna leads the Australian Grand Prix under absolute monsoon conditions. There is Nigel Mansell, who has passed Gerhard Berger for second. At the moment, working lap number 4. Berger is doing his best to hold off the attentions of young German Michael Schumacher in the Benetton. Quickly down to the pits and John Visigliano.
We have a torrent of rain coming through this pit lane. It's raining now harder than ever. Just before the start of the race, they changed all the electrics on Senna's car. Ron Dennis with wrenches in his hands doing the work with the mechanics. Patrese, he also had electrics changed and a new clutch. Now, this is terrible when it comes to the wet. Of course, electrics is something that everyone is very much worried about in these wet conditions. On the grid itself, everyone was cranking in more wing, putting on bigger wings. They want downforce in this wet, softening up the springs, and even changing the gear ratios. They went from wet to dry, from dry to wet settings here in about 25 minutes.
There you see the running order after 3 laps. I tell you what, I hope Ron Dennis wasn't working on my car.
Nigel Mansell is in fact catching up with the acknowledged rainmaster, Ayrton Senna. Nigel spent more time in the pit on their exploratory laps. He went in, did 1 lap, nipped in the pits, and I suspect they made some pretty major setup changes to that car when he realized they were going to have to race at least the first part of this race in such extreme conditions. There you see a great view from the helicopter as they sweep through the streets. This is obviously real streets here. A bit of a chicane coming up here, a left-right flick. It's fast as heck in the dry, that. And this is what they call the Stag corner, this tight right-hander, because there's the Stag pub on the corner. Down Jones Straight, Rundle Street in real life. Then there's a very fast left-hander just coming up, right-hander, onto De Quetzville Terrace, which is the Brabham Straight. And there again you get an idea of just how much these guys can't see.
That's with a long camera lens looking up De Quetzville Terrace. There was betting, legal betting on this race. There's a big tent just behind our announce position where they were taking odds. Boy, I'll bet you there's a bunch of bookies quaking in their shoes over this one. All bets are off here in Adelaide because this rain really does make things difficult. Nigel Mansell is no slouch in the wet either. He's had some great races in the rain.
Certainly no slouch today. He's definitely making inroads onto Senna. Not much, but definitely there, because there comes a point in the rain where you don't want to get much closer, because then you really can't see anything.
Nigel Mansell with Ayrton Senna out ahead of him. Hanging in the balance there is the Constructors' Championship. Ayrton Senna has already clinched the driver's title, but Williams is just 11 points behind McLaren Honda for that Constructors' title, and they want it desperately. We've had more action elsewhere on the racetrack, and John has more.
Satoru Nakajima was the first victim of this very slick track. He came into the pit area with a totally demolished front nose. They changed it, high-timed it in about 14 seconds, which is very fast for that change. They also put on 4 more brand-new Pirelli rain tires. These soft Pirelli rain tires should be able to go the distance as long as the track stays this wet.
Satoru Nakajima was, I believe, 4th in this race 2 years ago when it rained so badly. In his farewell appearance in Grand Prix racing, I'm sure he is terribly disturbed about that.
Mansell putting some very serious pressure now on Senna on lap number 6. You can see those cars darting around as they hit that water.
Mansell gets off to one side to try to get a little bit of visibility.
Of course, the other thing about a street course is that normally on a race track like the Watkins Glen Road Atlanta, there is a line that's been set up over the years, and of course the trick in rain is to drive outside that line because it becomes incredibly slippery in the rain. Now the street course, there's Nelson Piquet on the wrong line. Whoops, gets it round 360 degrees, flops it into second gear, and on his way again. Nelson no doubt cursing in Brazilian or Portuguese.
Nelson.
But of course on a street course like this you can't go on the off line because there is no line established really. But street courses are undoubtedly much more slippery than a racetrack because of all these intersections that we're looking at.
There's another
like this
right
one right here. In normal everyday life, buses, trucks, cars and vans stop at traffic lights and halt signs and things and drop oil. And so on a day like today, it becomes very unpleasant. They obviously can't try and miss the puddles because you can't see the puddles when your head's only 16 inches off the deck. And they found out more. Lorini.
Well, it would have to be Lorini's Modena. He's the only one in the race.
Boy, oh boy, I tell you, they were lucky there because they were side by side. The road was totally blocked. Now what are they going to do? Are they going to red flag this?
No indication of any flag from the flag stand right now.
There was the thing. Nigel pulled out of that spray. His visibility would have been nil. And suddenly to be presented by those two parked cars. Senna catching up with lap traffic already. That's one of the Lotuses. I think it's... yes, it is.
Here's the rest of the field trying to get through that scene. Now that the big lens on the camera foreshortens that distance a little bit. The visibility is maybe a little bit better, but not much. You can see how blocked the track was.
Hope they're waving those yellow flags well back down the road. I'm sure they are. The Australian marshalling is usually the pretty high standard sort of marshalling that we're used to in the United States and Britain, probably the three best marshaled countries in the world.
Now Mansell has dropped well back behind Ayrton Senna as we begin to work lap number 8 of 81 scheduled. I doubt we'll go the distance. I'm sure this one will end at the end of the regulation 2 hours. But that remains to be seen. Stay right there. Welcome back to Adelaide, where the rain is coming down harder than ever. To the left of your screen, the race leader, Ayrton Senna, overtaking traffic. Right there in the red, the blue and yellow car, Nigel Mansell. Neither Senna nor Mansell has ever won in the 6 runnings of the Australian Grand Prix. Look at that. Looks like a hydroplane race.
This is that chicane, which is a quick chicane onto Wakefield Street. Senna weaving his way past one of the Minardis. That's Pierluigi Martini.
That's Roberto Moreno, I believe.
Okay, one of them.
Sitting in for Morbidelli.
Now then, it appears I was right about Schumacher, that he was either going to make a big splash for himself today or take a couple of wheels off, and unfortunately he's already appears to have done the latter, and he's out. John Alesi is out in the Prix. He's one of those 2 cars that we saw on the straight crash. Morbidelli is the Italian hero today, running in 6th spot as stand-in for Alan Prost, who was fired so unceremoniously earlier in the week by Ferrari while he was on holiday here in Australia. There's Nigel Mansell stuck behind the Minardi. Whistles by now. Mansell seems to have the ability, though, to pull or to reel Senna in at will. Whoa! There is Pierluigi Martini.
Right in front of Alex Caffey in the red and white footwear.
Right on the main straight. Obviously, I would say it's puddling up there badly.
And here comes Senna, the race leader.
Ooh.
Martini neatly parallel parked.
Schumacher's car to the bottom right of the picture. You can just see the wheel. Oh, Roberto Moreno now, the sole surviving Minardi out there.
Absolute monsoon conditions. You really wonder why they go ahead with the race in these conditions.
I must say, you wonder who's got it in for Adelaide. Adelaide is such a wonderful city. Clean living, I always thought. Seats has certainly got it in the gun for this race. I mean, this is one of the wonder spots of the world in terms of climate and weather. I mean, the Adelaide climate is absolutely first class, and it's 2 out of 3 years they've had this dreadful rain. Just hit the water. Oh. Now, if they see that on replay up in the FISA headquarters here at the track, I can't see them letting this race continue. But that was just took off on the water.
I thought it looked like he got booted from behind there. He just seemed to launch across the water. Mansell once again closing in. Now the race has gone 10 laps. If it is stopped at any point up until 3/4 distance, they will wait for the rain to subside and try to run the second half of the race on cumulative time. If we reach the three-quarter mark in this race, about 60 laps or so, they will call it a complete race. Senna and Mansell there. Here comes Alex Caffey in the footwork car. The footwork car is doing remarkably well this year. Excuse me, in this race. For the first time this year.
Oh, Nigel Mansell hit that water. There's obviously a very bad puddle just about where that marshal standing with the yellow flag. Caffey holding Senna up there, which won't please Senna, with Mansell right behind him. This, of course, is only Caffey's second race since Japan of last year, believe it or not.
What I meant to say is they're having a great race and a terrible year. This is the first time they've had both cars in the race all year, I think. They'll have Honda V10 engines next year, and Caffey will be replaced by Aguri Suzuki. Coming around to complete a lap 11 of 81 scheduled. You can see there is a huge crowd out here at Victoria Racetrack watching this event. The Aussies will not be denied their party.
Okay, Senna's starting to get just a little bit ratty now, I imagine. Whoa! Caffey didn't know that Mansell was going to be there. Move back. For a nick of time.
Before this race, Ayrton Senna said this is the best street circuit in the world, but he said when it is wet, it is very dangerous.
Well, of course, it's the best street circuit in the world because you've got some places here to stretch your legs, these long straights, but of course, when the rain on a city street, the last thing you want is to be able to do 190 miles an hour.
What a battle it's been in the World Championship between Ayrton Senna and Nigel Mansell. And now here they are in the 16th and final event of 1991. Once again, center stage.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I don't like them going down that straight with that big puddle with all those cars parked there.
There's the accident.
Stuff to hit now if they spin off. Truck there. Jesus, this is all pretty hairy.
Mansell's been a busy boy here in Adelaide this weekend. He was a star of an episode of Wheel of Fortune, which is run identically to the American program here. Nigel came a cropper on the phrase "Gone with the Wind." Couldn't figure that one out quite. He also went shark fishing, caught himself a 350-pound shark, which immediately earned him a nasty letter to the editor in the newspaper talking about this Brit coming over here and availing himself of the Australian wildlife. It is Senna, Mansell, Berger now 6.9 seconds behind Mansell in third place. Nobody else in sight as we continue to lap traffic here in Adelaide. Back to Adelaide. Coming up later tonight here on ESPN at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, NFL football. The Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Denver Broncos from Mile High Stadium in Denver, Colorado. John Elway battling for first place in the AFC West as they take on the Steelers tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN Sunday Night NFL. In Adelaide, Australia, which bills itself as part of the lucky country, you watch Gianni Morbidelli battling with Riccardo Patrese. This is for fifth place in the race. Down in the pits now, John Visignano has John Alesi of the Ferrari team.
John Alesi, you're the only one here in some dry clothes. Unfortunately, it's because you're out of the race so early. What happened?
You know, when I tried to overtake Piquet, behind Piquet was Schumacher, and he didn't see me. And with the front wheel, he touched my rear wheel, and we spun together on the straight lane. You know. But you know, it's really crazy to do a racing like that because we don't know if the interest of racing is more safety or more show. That is very dangerous.
What do you think they should call the race at half distance or so?
I know, because they start on the wet like that, they will finish the race like last year, like 2 years ago.
It's quite dangerous.
It's too dangerous. It's really, really crazy.
John Alesi, thank you. You look like you're happy to be safe here in the garage.
Sorry, I don't understand.
You look like you're happy to be safe here in the garage.
Yeah, of course, because when I saw my car at the end of the straight lane on the middle of the circuit, I was very surprised, you know.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Working lap number 15. Despite the rain, Ayrton Senna leads Nigel Mansell as they pass through the wreckage.
I just find this absolutely unconscionable that they allow these guys to go down that straight as a 100. I mean, everybody says, well, they can always slow up, then they don't have to do 190. But I mean, that is absolute you-know-what, because a racing driver is a racing driver. Can you imagine Senna or Mansell just giving up willingly at this stage? They're not going to do it. But I mean, they've got trucks there, they've got 3 or 4 crashed cars right at the side of the road, and they've got a known serious problem with aquaplaning, and there's a serious problem with Patrese car. Got a wing jammed under it. Is it his wing?
That's a piece of debris, I think, of one of the other cars involved in those wrecks that John Alesi just spoke about.
And I mean, it is still absolutely pouring with rain. In fact, it's raining heavier than ever now. I just don't see how they... I mean, why don't they just red flag it and wait for half an hour?
Well, I'm sure all of the same questions will be raised.
As Alesi said, I mean, one doesn't have to be paranoid about safety to realize that this is flying in the absolute face of adversity.
Now, is that Patrese or is that Mansell? That's Nigel Mansell parked by the side of the road, we are told. There is Michele Alboreto, who has spun. Once again, Nigel's car.
Looks like he's got a flat left tire, which would indicate that he's hit the rim on something and broken it.
Left rear corner. Looks like Nigel is out of the car as well. Doesn't see his helmet. He left the home fires burning there, at least in terms of his rain light, which was added, ironically, to the regulations following this race 2 years ago. Much bigger, much brighter rain lights so that the cars trailing could see cars up ahead. And now Berger with a wicked spin over the curb. And he's on the racing line.
Not for long. Boom. I mean, you can just see for yourselves. You don't need me to tell you that it's, in my opinion, foolhardy to continue racing in this. And look at the trucks all over the place. The cars spinning around. You've only got to hit one of those trucks with a racing car, and obviously you've only got to work out. It's not too difficult to tell with the racing car being about 16 inches high, and the ground clearance of the average truck. Get it around. Now it tried to get it around, but it wouldn't quite make it the second time.
There's Emanuele Pirro in the Dallara.
There you can see why they have those red lights. It's the only thing you can see in this Prix.
Ayrton Senna waiting at the flag stand, pleading with officials to stop the race. Berger is off.
That's at the chicane, I believe, the first chicane. I think Senna's going to slow down on his own accord here.
Now we have a red flag. A red flag is being waved from the starter's stand. The race will be called to a halt officially after 17 laps. And it remains to be seen what judgment the officials will make. But right now, with the rain teeming down...
Well, the judgment here in Australia, regrettably, does not seem to be all that it might be. This is the second time we've had a very controversial race here, and I just feel that I know it's a tough decision. Like we said, there's huge investment involved in this race, and to just not have it is very, very difficult. But on the other hand, there's so much you can ask people to do, even if they are getting $20 million a year.
2 years ago, when the race went on, despite the monsoon, television came in for a bit of a beating. Everybody thought that the TV crews wanted this race to go on so badly, and that was one of the reasons. We can assure you, we are not telling anybody anything regarding our desires. Of course, we want to see the racers all come out of this thing healthy. Let's get more now from John in the pit.
The scene down here, the actual pit lane and the garages are very, very much flooded. We had many team managers going down to the flag station and up to the FIA office, demanding this thing be brought to a halt. And you saw Ayrton Senna, someone who's very safety conscious, trying to send his opinion not through the microphone back to the team, but directly to the flag bearer himself. And now we hear that Nigel Mansell is being put into the ambulance, and someone has to think that with this amount of rain, the airport is closed right now due to heavy rain. If you can't land a plane in this, folks, there's no way you can drive a Formula One car. Let's hope Nigel Mansell's injuries are not serious.
You saw the number 16 lap waved up there. According to the rules, they will restart, assuming that the weather abates a little bit. They will restart according to the running order at the end of the previous complete lap, which in this case would be lap 16. Ayrton Senna, the pole sitter, the newly crowned world champion, pulls his car up to the flag stand or into the pit. We'll be back with more from Adelaide. Back to Adelaide, Australia, where we are under a red flag. The race has been stopped, and as Yogi Berra might have said, it's like deja vu all over again. Let's go back to 1989, when the gutters swelled with rain here at Adelaide. Alain Prost, driving as a McLaren teammate to Ayrton Senna, objected and tried to convince officials not to start the race in the rain. Nevertheless, they did. Prost came around at the end of lap 1 and quit that race. But after a short discussion, officials restarted, and the racetrack was absolutely strewn with spinning and wrecked cars. That was also the race that produced some of the most compelling video in racing history when Ayrton Senna came charging up behind Martin Brundle's Brabham and tore the wheels off his McLaren. Terry Boutsen went on, despite some spins, to collect a very controversial victory. Now we are back in Adelaide in 1991, and David, we have the same conditions all over again.
Exactly. Of course, as we saw from that video of Senna coming up out of the gloom behind Brundle, we had exactly the same sort of situation this afternoon, in the same place, too, that main fast straight to Kettleville Terrace, which is about 190 miles an hour in the rain, and we saw some tremendous spins and crashes there this afternoon, and while the track was littered with broken cars and tow trucks, Pierluigi Martini had the absolute typical high-speed aquaplaning crash. Here the car absolutely lifts off at the front and whacks straight into the wall, and they still continue to race in spite of that for some considerable time. Then finally, Nigel Mansell himself crashed. We didn't see the crash. The car didn't look too bad in the first shot, but he was helped out and helped into the ambulance. The car, in fact, hit the wall extremely hard. Ayrton Senna at this point started to get pretty irate. Berger himself spun very violently off. Didn't hit anything too hard. Long, big spin, though. And then, of course, Senna was waving frantically at officials, and they did put out the red flag.
As you say, the red flag was brought out, and down in the pit area, John Bizignano is standing by with Nigel Mansell.
What happened out there?
This is for the last time. I mean, I came through the chicane, everything seemed good, and the car just snapped out of control. It didn't feel as though it aquaplaned. I don't know whether I picked up some debris or whatever. All I know is the car snapped and it went straight in, and hopefully the television will show maybe what happened. But I mean, 10 laps before that or more, the race should have been stopped. When those accidents happened on the main straight, there was debris all over the place. I mean, my teammate had a wing under the front of his car. I mean, any of us could have picked up anything, and it just makes me speechless, because what, 4 cars down the straight, a truck, people there, and there's cars going past at 180 miles an hour.
I mean, these organizers have your lives in their hands. What would you like to say to them?
Well, I got a little bit of concussion at the moment. I think I've broken my left foot. My ankle's really bad. I'd rather not say anything. They're supposed to be the experts. I'll let you out there judge what should happen or not happen, but I'm out of here at the moment.
Thank you, Nigel.
Now, while officials begin their discussions about whether or not to start this race or when to restart it, given the weather conditions, we should point out that Mansell crashing out of this race means the Constructors' Championship has been clinched for the 4th straight year by the McLaren Honda team. But there are other positions in the Constructors' Championships very much at stake. John is now standing by with one of those team owners, Eddie Jordan.
Eddie Jordan, of course, you have a stake here still in the Constructors' Championship and so forth. Would you like to see the race continue?
Well, not for that very reason. I think the most important aspect here is the safety, obviously, and that's down to the drivers. I've discussed it both with our 2 drivers independently, and they're very keen to continue racing. We're possibly one of the lucky teams that have 2 cars still running. In my opinion, if it's safe to do so, I'm here to race. I'd like it to continue, of course. We're racers after all.
Absolutely, but right now you would agree that the track is undrivable.
I'm not in that position, please. You know, I'm here as the boss of the team, and we're in very capable hands of the circuit and FISA. Rene knows exactly what's going on, and if he says it's not suitable to race, in his opinion, and after all, he's taking responsibility for everybody's life here, and I think he's the only one that can make that decision.
How long are you willing to wait? They're putting up 10-minute board, 10-minute board, 10-minute board.
Well, it's a red 10-minute board, which means it is another 10 minutes before the next decision. And I think they've had now a clear indication from the local airport, which is a couple of miles away, that it is actually clear and stopped raining there. The front is coming from that direction. So they expect to see it cleared and stopped within the next 3-4 minutes. I think that's a bit optimistic myself. But I think the people and the television viewers deserve the chance to at least maybe see another race, providing the safety is obviously well catered for.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Well, the decision is in the hands of the officials, and we expect one shortly. We'll be right back to wet, monsoon-like Adelaide, Australia.
They're closing on the Formula One World Driving Championship for 1991. Now it's time to set the competition aside, open a cold one, and enjoy the charms of one of the world's most hospitable countries. ESPN Speed World coverage of the Formula One Grand Prix of Australia has been brought to you by Acura Automobiles. Experience precision-crafted performance. And by Mobil 1 Synthetic Motor Oil. Isn't your car worth the extra protection?
We are back in Adelaide, Australia, still under a red flag after 15 laps of this final round of the 1991 World Championship. Riccardo Patrese out of his car and headed for the official stand atop the timing tower. I bet I know what he has on his mind, David.
Yeah, he's pretty hot about the whole thing. He obviously feels it should have been halted some laps before, and I must say that I fully concur with him on that.
Well, down in the pit lane, John has caught up with another of the team owners, Ron Dennis from McLaren.
Ron Dennis, at one point, it might be good to have a lawyer with you on the Formula One circuit, but you know all the rules. What's the situation?
Well, they have the ability to continuously postpone the race 10 minutes at a time. I think there's a strong desire from everybody to continue the race if the weather improves, but it really doesn't look like the weather's improving, in which case they have the ability to call the red flag, the end of the race, and in that situation there would be half points awarded. I think the positions of the cars would be determined by 1 lap prior to the red flag.
In the interest of safety, what would you recommend for them to do?
I don't think it's very prudent to start the race until it stops raining. I think that the drivers can cope with the puddles and the surface water, but the continuous rain is too hazardous at the moment.
Ron Dennis, congratulations on a Constructors' Championship. I know you would have liked to battle to the last lap, but congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right, now Roland Broinserada, who is the International Formula One Safety Director, is taking the stand, and he has the red flag. This Australian Grand Prix is now over, and that will certainly not go over well with this rain-drenched crowd. But as has been said many times today, safety comes first. This race is over, and since it did not reach halfway, we will be awarding half points. On the podium, Ayrton Senna winning his first Australian Grand Prix, along with teammate Gerhard Berger in third. Nigel Mansell getting medical attention. He is not there. Let's take a look at our top 12 results. Senna, Mansell, and Berger, followed by Nelson Piquet in his final drive for the Benetton team, perhaps his final Grand Prix drive ever. Riccardo Patrese fifth, and in sixth, the final point-paying position, Gianni Morbidelli in his first drive with the Ferrari factory team. 7th through 12th, Emanuele Pirro, Andrea De Cesaris, Alessandro Zanardi, Stefano Modena, Johnny Herbert, and J.J. Leto in the 12th position. Drivers' points will not change as a result of today's event. It is Senna over Mansell, 96-72, followed by Riccardo Patrese, Gerhard Berger, and Alain Prost, who, no doubt somewhere, is watching events here in Adelaide with a bemused smile. Constructors' Championship, McLaren Honda over Williams Renault, followed by Ferrari, Benetton Ford, the Jordan Ford team, and Tyrrell Honda. Our winner, Ayrton Senna, is now down in the interview room. Let's listen in for his thoughts.
I think it's very hard for the officials to make such a decision because there is a lot of pressure, television all over the world, and it's difficult, we understand. But I think it's, in a way, it's our own fault. We should have started as drivers. If we just get out of the cars, stick together, and make a decision ourselves, then the race wouldn't start in first place. It's always very difficult to get everyone together. I experienced it myself 2 years ago, today again, because also we have a lot of responsibility to the teams and the sponsors that give us so much, and there are moments that we have to also try to give them something, but it's very difficult to find the equilibrium, the balance on making the right decisions at every single time. But as I said, I think it was a mistake to all of us to have started, not only from the officials. It was also a driver's mistake, was a team's mistake. We all should have had courage as a group, everyone that is here, to get together and go against it and not start the race.
Ayrton Senna, 3-time world champion. David, your final thoughts on the way we've ended this season?
Well, of course, two or three things spring to mind, one of which, of course, is Prost. No wins at all this year, being fired by Ferrari just this week. And in a very strong article in the paper this week, he pointed out the differences between Italian team and the way English teams are run. And, of course, it may be that we don't even see Prost back in World Championship racing next year, or Nelson Piquet, both of them three-time world champions. His point in this paper was that the English teams have a tremendous philosophy to go out and win, which he could never quite instill into Ferrari. And I think that McLaren this year showed that to the absolute nth degree. Right early on, Senna had a 4-race winning streak and warned all the time that the car was not perfect, it was not great, and that they were a bit lucky to win, and so on and so forth. Ron Dennis has agreed this week that he reacted somewhat late to his driver's views, but react he did. And, of course, the McLaren Hondas came on with a tremendous rush at the end of the season, having a very strong close. And, John, with your final thoughts for the day and the season.
Well, David, we're right down here in what has become a tradition in Adelaide, the great Australian sell-off. The 1991 season will be officially over when everyone goes through their team gear to the great Australian fans. And that will also mark the beginning of the 1992 season. Believe it or not, there is an official Formula One tire test in Estoril, Portugal, 1 week from today. Everyone is leaving this garage area, everyone is leaving this pit lane with one thing in mind: to be more competitive in 1992. It all starts in March. David, Bob, thanks for a great season. You're up there in that nice, warm, dry booth. We'll be meeting in the, I say, for Foster's here pretty soon, lads.
Class will tell, John. Thanks very much to you as well. This certainly isn't the way we would have chosen to end the 1991 Formula One season, but it has been a most entertaining year. We'll leave you with some of the memorable moments of Grand Prix Racing 1991. For David Hobbs and John Bizignano, I'm Bob Barsha. So long for now from Adelaide, Australia.